Your ship can't come in if you don't send some out. It was a Dale Carnegie quote that he had a book or something. Anyway, send out ships. We sent them everywhere. A lot of them came back. The Moody Foundation, the reason they came back is because Lou was in Galveston and went by the Moody Foundation and tried to convince them that we were good people. They didn't know us. Then Phyllis and Joe Hirsch were in Galveston. They went by. They talked to the Moody Foundation, and yes, they did give us something. The Hobletzel Foundation, on the other hand, Martin had some relatives that I think lived in Dallas and knew them. I guess we kind of touched everything that any of us knew to do, and I wrote a lot of letters. And I remember the one that blew my mind, just a letter, was to Mr. Caldwell, the zoo man in Tyler. His wife was a librarian, and on the strength of a letter, he sent me a check for $500 for the building fund. I mean, people could see that we really wanted this to happen, and they helped. And don't think that it was just big contributions. It was not. There were $5 contributions. The teachers, we gave 3-year pledges. The teachers pledged $10 a year sometimes. And so then you had all this mountain of work to keep up with the pledges, and I thought, how are we going to do this? When you read this, you'll see how we did it. George Fitz was our treasurer. He assigned Mary Jo Schnorbus, one of his staff members, to take care of those pledges. We didn't ask Dorothy and the staff to do it. This was, you know, our thing, and we were doing it. They were running the library. And we did decide that we were going to do it, and we worked our hearts out. Students at the schools worked on this and became Friends members, gave $5. I've still got some little cards that were in the paper. And the media followed every footstep that we had. I can't even tell you, in today's world, I don't know that you could even do this. But it was like everybody was kind of pulling in the same direction. And there were so many people that I want to tell you about, that I want to remember, and I know I can't talk about all of them. Jewel Young had a big influence on where this library sits. She liked this location, and she was on the location committee. And then there was Miss Emma Mae Brutsey. Does anybody remember her? She was retired as a school administrator, so she knew about grants. And we wrote one of the last Library and Services Construction Act grants that they had. There was very little money left, but she wrote it. We didn't write it. She wrote it. She knew what to do. We didn't know what to do. And Martin really tried to get $150,000, but because of our size, had it been the county, then we would have gotten the $150,000, but because it was just the city, they would only give us $75,000, which even at that, to me, that sounded like a tremendous amount. We created a national honorary committee headed by Lady Bird Johnson, Bill Moyers, and Y.A. Tittle, and had lots of other members on that committee. They didn't really do a lot, except it made us feel good to know that they were there, and to know that Marshall had produced people of the caliber we're talking about. But they had used the library services that were right here when they were growing up. So we couldn't take credit for that, but Marshall could take credit for incubating such wonderful people. And there were many of them. Then we got the biggest surprise of all. We picked up the paper one day, and Miss Emma Louise Walker had left her estate to this library. We started looking around. Who is Miss Emma Louise Walker? None of us really knew who it was. Well, Lewis and Stanley, his brother, knew who it was. They had coffee with her at Fry Hodge, if any of you remember Fry Hodge, and they talked a lot about it, I'm sure. Stanley did. He was so proud of it. And she banked with Bill Gall. So I guess she got it from lots of different sources. She left one half of a house that she owned with her family. She left $35,000 cash, and I'm doing this for memory, so if it's not right, y'all, I'm the one at fault. But this is how I remember it. And the rest of her estate. Well, long story, the library and the city never got the half house. The $35,000 went into this building. And a couple of years ago, some of her mineral rights started producing. And now our library has been benefited through, I don't know how much money, I really don't. But I'd like to know, because I saw that all happen, and I'd like to know just what benefit it was to the library. But the thing that I think bothers me more than anything is that there's not really anything here in the library that tells us what she did. She had no children, and we have no way of knowing how many lives that woman's money has touched. But something needs to be here, I think. That's my opinion. Everybody's interested in their opinion, you know, and that's mine. But anyway, by the time that we had gotten pretty close to completing the match, the Federation of Women's Clubs decided that they're the ones who owned the private library, where the chamber eventually went into. They decided to donate their assets to the new library. And Ina Jean and I were still members of the music club. We were still part owners. And it was a very generous offer, and I've read the newspaper clippings about it, and I have my own memories, but the one thing that was evident was that those women, in giving their assets to the city, made it very clear that they wanted whatever came back from their assets to go into this library. There's no question about that in my mind. And to my knowledge, you know, that has happened. The endowment, I think we've gotten checks for that. Of course, now you don't get much interest, which is a problem, but that's another asset that we have that needs to be watched. And now, of course, it's come up in the news that the chamber is no longer using the building, and that it could possibly go up for sale. And this is not a very good economic time. I'm putting a lot of opinions in this, and I know you all know that. And it's okay. I can't help it. I have them. I know that the city will be good stewards of the donation and will do the best they can with it. But in a way, we've gone a lot of years without doing very much to the building. And anyway, I was part of that because when I became mayor, we didn't ever talk about the fact that it was a minimum amount of rent. And I didn't do anything about it. The city was able to care for the library, and there were so many other things. And I know there are still a lot of other things.